paid a little bit of money to go and be appraised, to be able to teach people like you. And there were no guarantees with that process. Basically, you show up with your vehicle, with your gear, and they haze the crap out of you. Overland Expo 2 years ago, if you were there, it rained on us, it poured, it snowed, we called it Snowverland Expo. And of course, my period of instruction with Bill Burke and Chris Cole began on a Monday morning after the weather had been hammering on us the entire time. Northern Arizona, blue clay mud, it gets very sticky there. So Bill Burke takes his Range Rover, which is very well appointed, and takes it right out into one of those cow pastures there at Mormon Lake and gets it cross-axled and stuck, takes the keys out and walks away and says, you got to get the truck out. The winch doesn't work, the engine won't start, so on and so forth, but if you don't move the vehicle 15 feet within 15 minutes, you failed and you can all piss off and go home. Excuse my language. And that's how it began. I'm not even kidding.
That was the start.
That was the start of a week-long haze fest of learning about all this gear and driving different vehicles. Everything from a 70 series Land Cruiser to a Defender 90 to the Range Rover, Jeeps, different types of Jeeps. So you learn a lot in the process as you go along. Some of you guys have been wheeling your whole lives. I'm one of those guys. And one thing that I learned along the way, you got to stay humble, because you're going to get in situations where you may not know what to do. So one of the things that I've learned that I want to pass to you guys as we start this off is a lesson that they learned on the old Camel Trophy. Who's ever heard of the Camel Trophy? Okay. I just came back from UARI BFG, 36 hours of UARI event. You may have seen that on social media. This is one of the teaching points that we told the teams on day one. The Camel Trophy, they would sit down in a very British approach to things when they would have a big stuck, a big mess up, to PG-13, that terminology. They wouldn't just jump in there, great guns, and start trying to get a truck unstuck and expend a lot of energy, expend resources, maybe break something and make it worse. They would sit back and brew a pot of tea. A very British approach to things. And they would sit back from afar, and we'd sit over here, and we'd talk about it, and we'd look at it. And you'd poke holes in my idea, and I'd poke holes in your idea, and eventually we would decide as a group what we were going to do to expend our limited manpower, resources, energy. You know, these guys were dragging Land Rovers through Panama into Colombia. If you've ever done any research on the Camel Trophy stuff that they did, very physical. Getting a vehicle unstuck is a physical thing. So that's something to consider when you go into a recovery situation. And it was actually covered earlier in Chris's class, that mental health piece. Make sure that you're ready, that you're emotionally ready. You may be looking at your very beautiful, this is your baby, right? And it may be hurting. Some people freak out because their truck's stuck, broken. I've seen people lose their minds on the trail, right? Okay? A quick assessment of yourself. Am I hydrated? Am I ready to get in there and do this very physical work that's going to need to be done to recover the vehicle? Should I stop and make a sandwich before I do this, get my blood sugar on point, get myself feeling good so that I'm ready to attack the recovery? So that part of a recovery is important. And just like in emergency medicine, where a casualty is down, we now have a vehicle casualty. I don't need 20 chiefs and one Indian. And you see this on the trail. All the know-it-alls will come out of the woodwork. And I don't care what you know or what you've done, who's in charge of this vehicle? Richard. It's his rig, so anything we're going to attach to it, we may damage it or whatever, it's got to be okay with Richard. So he knows where his attachment points are at. All right, and we'll talk about that stuff in a minute. But overall, he's in charge of the recovery because it's his vehicle. Now, if there's an expert on scene, let's say Brent Haywood's there and he's the go-to guy and he knows a lot about recovery. Richard may say, hey man, what do you think? I'm going to go ahead and defer to you. And now he's the on-scene commander for the recovery. He'll be giving the hand and arm signals to the driver. He'll be controlling the winching. He'll be in charge, and the rest of us will be in supporting tasks. And we'll also be staying out of what?
Away.
Right, away, danger. Because when things break, when lines part, when vehicle components fail, sometimes people get hurt. And what you don't want is all right, we've got a vehicle casualty. Well, now Brent's been injured because something happened. Now we're in a worse situation. All right? So always stop and think, step back, assess the situation, come at it in a very controlled, non-emotional, rational approach. Everything to do with vehicle recovery is mathematics. It's all mathematics. If I'm in mud, there's a mire factor there, which means that truck, I'm going to gauge this Tundra 7,000 pounds. How am I doing?
Probably 5.
5?
Taking a guess.
Okay.
If it's stuck, it's going to be about 7.
It looks heavier to me just at a glance because it's a Tundra, so I'm thinking that it's heavier than a Tacoma, which I always gauge at 5. Rule of thumb, when I see a Jeep, I'm thinking about 5,000. I go to 7, and there's no exact science there unless you get in the data plate and you pull out your slide rule and you start doing the math on it. This is kind of a guesstimation game with the recovery. So you say you weigh 5, all right, but if he's in the mud up to the doors, what do you think I'm really pulling? You could easily double the weight of the vehicle because now you've got 100% rolling resistance, and mud does what? Suction. So you have a mire factor to account for. So before we go into all that stuff, let's look at these two different vehicles, all right? Your vehicle, and this is where you're going to go back later and assess yourself, your vehicle, and your gear set. Do you have what you need to be out on a certain trail? If you're on the Rubicon, for example, you're going to need front and rear recovery points that are rated for your vehicle with a cushion, right? Because we just talked about, he's 5,000, but a mire factor, if I've got 100% rolling resistance and he's truly screwed, I could be pulling 10,000 pounds on a single recovery point. So in my world, and you see that machine up on the hill there, the Dodge with the camper on it, I found out quickly that all of my recovery gear that was rated for a Toyota Tacoma was suddenly obsolete. I had to go to bigger shackles and everything else. So assess your...
If you want to give it away, I've got a Tacoma. Just saying.
So 3/4 inch bow shackles were fine, but I need 7/8 gear on that. You want to make sure that all your recovery points are up to snuff. Should you have front and rear recovery points? Shake your head in a rapid north-south manner. Yes, you should, because a lot of times people get the point man, the point vehicle gets stuck and he may need a tug. We may need to move the whole convoy around on the trail and turn it around. So front and rear recovery points are key. On a winch.
Question.
Yes, Mr. Cam.
A class 3 tow hitch. Is that a generally?
So your question is, can I use a class 3 tow hitch as a recovery point?
Yeah, well, they got the hooks and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
It depends what you're going to put in that class 3 tow hitch. All right.
Well, it also has the places for the.
Okay. So your little chains, safety chains for a trailer, never
use that.
Never
Okay.
put a D-ring in those little guys
Okay.
because they're not rated. Now, if you put a receiver hitch in there with a trailer ball on it, are we going to use a trailer ball to hook our snatch strap or our kinetic recovery rub to? Why? More than likely, it could snap off and that'll go through a windshield and that will kill somebody.
What about a tow hitch pin?
Yeah, the little ball, the chrome ball. So think metallurgy. Whenever I see something chrome, it looks cool, right? Okay, what does the chroming process do to steel?
Weakens it.
It makes it brittle. It makes it brittle. So any steel that's been chromed, all right, and you'll see this on some of these, you see these Bubba trucks rolling around with chrome D-rings and everything on them. Chrome won't get you home, right? It won't. So never use chrome anything. So don't use the ball, and I'll show you a piece of gear here in a minute. They do make receiver hitches that slide into those where you can put a properly rated screw pin bow shackle into.
All right, cool.
So that rear recovery point, and that's what I'm using on that Dodge right there, because that class 3 or 4 receiver hitch is the most solid attachment to the truck, because it's usually rated to tow a trailer, right?
Right.
So great
What about a
question
hook?
by Cam.
What about an open hook?
An open hook.
Not
I've got mixed feelings about open hooks. I like closed recovery. I like a full circumferential grab on whatever I'm attaching. Now you'll see winches with a hook right here. All right, you'll see a hook. Those are fine as long as they're what? Properly rated, and we're going to go over that now. Or actually, I'm going to talk about winches first. So there's a lot of different winches on the market. Does it matter if your winch is Smitty built, Warren, Super Winch, whatever? It doesn't really matter today. A lot of winches are actually being made in a couple of factories in China. This is the truth, open kimono here. They may not want you to know. What really matters is it properly rated for your vehicle? Is it properly mounted in a proper bumper with proper grade 8 or grade 5 at least hardware? All right. Is it wired? Because I've been on the trail before, somebody gets stuck, oh, I didn't hook that winch up yet. What are you doing out here then? On the trail is not the time to figure out how to wire your winch and figure it out. Having access to your winch. I like to be able to see the drum, all right? Because I want to know what my line is doing. A proper fair lead, okay? He's got synthetic line, yes, with steel roller fair lead. People will tell you that's a no-go. I'm here to tell you that that's fine, all right? Bill Burke actually recommends a roller fair lead on synthetic line because as it rolls, what does it not accumulate? Heat, friction. Haas fair leads are cool, they work, all right? But as your synthetic line rubs across that, it is getting hot, and heat kills synthetic line. It's no bueno. So a roller fair lead's fine as long as it's not burred up. If you had steel line on there before and it's got some burrs and some abrasions on there, all right, and then you switch that to synthetic line, every time you're passing the line across those abrasions, you're degrading the strength of that line. So this is good to go. I run a roller fair lead on the front of mine with the synthetic line for that very reason. Now, if you do in a certain situation, and this is why Warren and Super Winch and a lot of companies, because it's a litigious society, lawyers, they will recommend to say only Haas fair lead. It's because in a certain situation, in the corners of the rollers, it'd have to be the exact perfect storm, but it could pinch a synthetic line and cause it to break. Tim?
What about the synthetic, essentially, rollers? You recommend replacing steel with the synthetic Delrin rollers? Or no?
Okay, did everybody hear Tim's question about synthetic rollers? Those are good as long as they've got a steel core. What you don't want is you don't want just a synthetic tube
On your bolts?
right on a bolt. That's probably no bueno. It needs to be sleeved and again, properly rated. And that's going to be a recurring message throughout this period of instruction. But yeah, I do recommend those. Those are great. Like the ones that Viking used to sell. Those are good to go as long as they're rated for the type of pulls that you're going to do. You can actually take your steel ones, like I'm about to do, and Cerakote them. Which is one, it's an appearance thing, and then two, they're perfectly smooth. You know what Cerakote is, it's a good product. So, winches, lots of different brands. The most important thing is it set up properly? Is everything working together and properly rated? Pause fair lead right here on a synthetic line with a Smitty built winch. All right, you can see he's got, state of California, they want that front plate, right? It's awesome. So he's got that removable, he's legal. He's got safety hook on there and he's got D-rings. He's got good recovery points. Everybody would agree with that, okay? So front and rear, everybody understands that, as well as having these guys accessible. All right, don't have this buried away, or worse yet, left at home. This is a wireless controller. What should I carry in addition to this wireless controller?
Batteries.
Batteries
Or the
And
wire.
the cord.
and that as a backup. I always have two ways because this could get dropped in a mud hole. And now is it going to work? Probably not unless it's IP68 rated or whatever. It's probably not going to work after I fish it out of the pond. Okay? So always have a backup. All right? Properly rated winches. What winch is this, Richard? Okay, so this is a Warn 9000. How much can this winch pull? 9,000 pounds, right? Okay, am I going to get that right here off this top layer? Nope. When will it pull 9,000 pounds? The first wrap on the drum, the first layer. And as I add more and more line, the circle, it's mathematics again, right? It's cool. So as the circle gets larger, I'm losing winching power. It's degrading, which is why you always want to pull all your line off a winch. I'm a big fan of pulley block, single pulley block, back to this, from my winch through a pulley block. Now what can that winch pull? 18,000 pounds, buddy. As long as I pull all that line off it and I've got a good anchor point out there, I'll pull it out of there like nobody's business. But now I'm pulling 18,000 pounds. What just happened to his attachment points? Are they rated?
For 18.
See, it gets scary, and I see people, they're doing recoveries. You always think about the mathematics of what you're about to apply to your vehicle. Tim.
No, sorry, go ahead.
Okay. So think about that stuff. If you're going to do a single line out there to a pulley block and back, what we call a double line pull, now 9,000 became 18,000 on the bottom layer.
But doesn't it split that 9,000 on the winch and 9,000 on the
He's
on the
correct.
attachment
That's
point?
where I was thinking. I was trying to think again.
Yep.
Mechanical advantage.
Mechanical advantage.
Mechanical advantage.
What if I put two pulley blocks out there? I go out to one, back
3-1.
3. All right, the numbers go up, right? So if I'm trying to compete against a mire factor and I don't have enough juice out of that winch, just like on an old sailing ship, I use pulley blocks to create that mechanical advantage. Tim.
Okay, what you were saying is not exactly correct. You are putting, for a double line pull, you're putting 18,000 pounds on the bumper, but you're
Half, but still I'm applying more force.
correct. I was just saying that you're not necessarily extending your
Not
weight
necessarily.
unless
But
you,
what
unless
everybody
they're going
needs,
back to the same
what
point.
everybody needs to understand is have everything overrated. If you think that you're going to pull 9,000 pounds, make sure that you've got a fudge factor on there. When we design safety gear, recovery gear, it's rated at 5-to-1 because it's rated for overhead work, which means if it says 5,000 pounds on that gear, all right, it's actually been tested to failure at how much?
25,000.
Right? For safety. So make sure that your stuff and your attachments are all rated. Let's move around this table right here and look at this gear. So this is what I carry. Everybody's going to be different. These little bags are nice because if you get everything in one giant bag, then you're doing this. It's a gear bomb. I'm pulling stuff out of there. I don't know what I've got. But with these guys, you can peek in the top and I can see that's the first bag to pull out because it's got winch controller. So that's the first thing that I'm going to pull out. It's got a properly rated Crosby shackle for my vehicle. 7/8 Crosby. All right. A properly rated grade 8 or grade 5 pin for this guy. Factor 55 hitch link, which is going to work with that for a rear pull on my truck. All right. So that's my little bag, and these guys. Who's seen these before?
Bubble rope. Soft shackles by bubble rope.
Gator jaws. I love these things, and I'll tell you why. One, they're very light, they're very strong, and I can use these for a lot of different things. This guy's kind of a one-trick pony. I can hook him to things as long as the attachment point will receive it. This guy, you can get creative with him. All right. If this vehicle was rolled over, not everybody could see this, I can attach this to the rock slider and it'll get in tight spaces, and I can attach. I can do a lot more with one of these guys than I can with a standard screw pin bow shackle.
What are they called, Dave?
This is a gator jaw by Bubba Rope, but it's basically a synthetic shackle. All right. So recommend that because it's just so utilitarian and they're very strong. All right.
What are they rated at?
These guys are rated at, this is a 7/16 plasma HMPE for all of our tech nerds out there. Breaking strength is 32,000 pounds. This is rated to pull the Dodge with the camper out. 32,000 pounds. I feel pretty confident about attaching that. These little bags, I found these online. These are by Meritech. They're like $15 a piece, but it makes it nice because, again, you have your gear in little bites that you can pull it out as needed. Let's talk about screw pin bow shackles. Here's a collection. Chicago, USA. Inch and an eighth, rated at 9.5 tons. That's with a 5-to-1 safety factor built in. 9.5 tons. How much is a ton? Okay, things that we need to know. So this guy will pull how much?
20,000.
20,000 pounds. Wait, what was this rated at? 32. Okay, here Cam. Tell me what we can bring more of. Trip. The synthetics weigh nothing next to that. But in certain situations, this guy's your friend because he's very tough.
So what's the catch on the synthetic? They seem like the no-brainer option.
Well,
Sharp edges. Yeah.
sharp edges, heat, UV degradation. You don't want to leave these sitting out in the sun forever, which is why you want your synthetic winch ropes covered up. You see here on his synthetic line, it's got a sleeve there, so it's covered it up. That's keeping the sunlight off of it and helping against abrasion. Steel line, you can drag it over rocks, not worry about it. In the commercial logging industry, they use steel cables, steel chokers, steel haulbacks, shotgun logging. It's all steel for that very reason because they can drag it through trees and rocks all day long and it's going to live. Commercial fishing industry, to include helicopter logging, they use this because it's very light and they're not running into abrasion as much. So with your screw pin bow shackles, I got a collection here. You can come up and look at these if you'd like, and we're going to talk about some different ones. Okay, this guy looks cool, right? This one says a safe working load limit 4.7 tons. 4.7. But what it's missing, the standard 3/4 inch bow shackle. But what it's missing is any other type of identifying marks. If you look at a similar product from Crosby, as one brand, and there's such Chicago, Crosby. This one's stamped USA. It's CE on there. CE means it's a French for certification, European, which basically means it's met standards. It's been assessed and tested to failure by an independent laboratory, which is what you want. So this guy is rated at 6.5 tons. Well, this guy says it's rated at 4.7. You see how much more steel is in this one, but yet it's a very modest rating. It's because the safety factor in this, the 5-to-1, I don't trust this one as much because it's not as well marked. You want to see where it was made. You want to see all those certification stampings on there. These guys by Warren Epic Shackles. These are their new 3/4 inch screw pin bow shackle from Warren. This is their Epic. Working load limit of 9 tons. 9 tons. It's got a CE stamp on it, but this guy's rated at 6.5. Does that look like, which one looks like a 9-ton shackle? Right? So again, carefully choose your recovery gear because it's easy to spend a bunch of money on stuff, but at the end of the day, it's all about the numbers and it's all about the safety factor on that gear. So just because it looks cool, it's bling, doesn't always mean that it's the best. On that same note, this guy, working load limit 6.5 tons. This is a generic Chinese shackle, 7/8 shackle. Is there anything wrong with that?
Shiny.
Well, it's shiny, but it's not necessarily chromed. But there's really nothing wrong with this. The Chinese metallurgy, you see stuff from Smittybilt. I'll throw Smittybilt out there. As long as it's marked, as long as it's properly rated, all right, they're making better stuff than they used to. So I'm all about made in USA, but I've kind of had to get away from that because a lot of stuff, and I'll use an example, like synthetic lines. Where do you think a lot of this stuff comes from? The market's changing. It's a world economy. So just because of where something's made does not always make it a superior product. Next bag, we talked about screw pin bow shackles. Let's talk about pulley blocks. Oh, I've got 2 more pulley blocks over there that I need to get.
You want me to get them? Where are they at?
There. In the box right underneath the ladder, there's 2 pulley blocks in there. Thank you. So this guy is by ARB, and this guy's rated at 20,000 pounds, pulley block. Very light. I'm a big fan of this product. It's got a synthetic roller, which you want to look at if you're using synthetic line. You'll see them with a V shape, which is bad because it smashes your line down in there, or with a U shape, a proper U shape for your roller where the line goes through there. Clamshell, it's very easy to use, it's very light, and you'll see why once you guys start handling the stuff compared to some of the other things on the market. I like this guy. Capacity up to 1/2 inch, which is important if you're a full-size guy like me. You want all your recovery gear and your lines to be rated at about 1/2 inch or 7/16. So that's important. Nice, lightweight, that's why I carry it. And then what do I need to go with this?
Another D-ring.
Screw pin bow shackle or, right? And my friend, the tree strap. So this guy,
So bright.
by ARB, and you'll see that my kit, I'm not really brand loyal to any one particular brand because lots of different companies are making good gear. Back to China, where do you think this is made? It is, but again, it's a nice piece of gear. It's properly rated. This is your tree strap.
You want me to
All
be
right?
your tree?
Huh?
You want me to be your tree?
Now, here's something that I learned. This is a 10-foot tree strap. Okay, look at that tree over there. All right. You want 16-foot tree straps versus 10 in some parts of the country. You go back east, this is just fine. All right, you're in the south, it's all those little pines and stuff. This is just fine. Bigger trees, you'll want a longer one. You want to make sure when you've got your straps out, they're not gouged. There should be no tears. You do a visual inspection on your gear all the time to make sure, all right, that it's still good. This one says a minimum braking strength of 12,000 kilograms. 12,000 kilograms.
Yeah, so they double it.
Quick math for Marines, it's how much?
28,000 pounds.
Okay, that's a lot. So again, rated to receive a pull from my vehicle. All right, this is polyester. What's different between polyester and nylon that might be important?
Stretch.
Stretch. Which one will stretch?
Nylon.
Okay. You don't want this one to stretch. This is my anchor point, right? I don't want it to stretch. I don't want it to load up. I don't want it to move. So it's very important that you use polyester as a tree strap and nylon as a recovery strap or a winch extension. So there's your tree strap. In here, in this bag, we've got another screw pin bow shackle, all right, a green pin. This guy's made in Holland, rated at 4.75 tons. Good piece of gear. The screw pin, the green pins are good to go. We've got another one. Where's this guy made? This is a Columbia McKinnon, which is another American brand of recovery gear, big in the overhead rigging industry. This guy's a 7/8, rated at 9.5 tons, properly stamped, properly marked. You'll see the difference when you guys come up and handle those. And then our all-important winch extension, all right? If you're not carrying an extension, you're wrong, and I'll tell you why. Because how much winch line is on here, Richard? 125 feet, all right? So if I'm gonna go out and do to a pulley block and come back, now how much line do I have?
62 feet.
Okay, so having the ability to reach out farther and anchor to something farther away is a huge advantage, because Murphy, right? We all know who Murphy is. He's gonna put that tree just out of reach. He's gonna put that rock just out of reach, and you'll be sitting there thinking, man, I wish I just had 10 more feet of line. So how heavy is this? Weighs nothing. That's life and death, because that's 50 more feet. We won't talk about cost. Synthetic line is expensive, but again, very strong, very light, and having light recovery gear does what for your gas mileage?
It's a money saver.
Saves you money in the long run, because you can leave it in the rig. It's always there when you need it, all right, but it's not heavy like some of those other pieces of gear.
200-year camera packs.
All right, so having a good extension is very important, and again, properly rated for your vehicle and what you're going to pull. So there's that guy. That's a 50-foot extension, and this guy's got this is Warn Spydura Pro, and this is working load limit of 12,000 pounds, 3/8 50 foot.
You're assuming 5 times the working load limit as the braking strength?
Say again?
You're assuming, or you're using as a rule of thumb 5 times the working load limit?
That is the industry standard in recovery gear. Anything that's used by law for OSHA, anything that's used for overhead rigging, like in film or construction or anything, has to have a 5-to-1 safety factor engineered into that product. It's an assumption. Now, here's the honest truth, right? I think Warren's probably putting a 2-to-1 in this, because again, it says 9 tons on it. Okay, this guy, this Van Beest shackle from Holland, says 4.75 tons.
Depends on the material, I guess.
Well, and you can get into metallurgy, and we can talk that all day, but I think that this is a lot more realistic of a marking than this. 9 tons is a lot, all right? So, back to tree straps again. If your strap's not marked, or there was a random little tag, again, here's a Chinese strap, but I took a Sharpie and I marked it so I can see it at a glance. Safe working load, 10,000 pound, marked on it tree. That's a tree strap, all right? Because you're tired when you're doing recovery, you're already annoyed. Remember the mental acuity, your mental health piece. You're already unhappy because your overland mobile is hung up. You're having a bad day. So you want to make it easy in a recovery. Look at this guy. Safe working load of 6,600 pounds. Am I going to use that on the Ram? No. This is to pull you guys out with. Okay? But I keep it. Having a variety of straps, and they make these little guys to mind them. Those are useful. And here we go. This is a toe strap, another one for you guys. Safe working load, 7,200 pounds. Clearly marked. It's in good working order. I keep that in the bag. Pulley blocks. We talked about the ARB guy. These are good because they're light. Properly rated for 20,000 pounds. I'm a big fan. Old school guy. This is Warn. This guy's rated at 4.5 tons. 5-inch. It'll take a 1/2-inch rope. All right. Looks high quality. It's great. Again, it's marked Warn right on it. Properly marked and rated. It's made in China, and China doesn't always mean bad anymore. Much as it pains me to say that. This guy, much heavier. This guy's rated to 18 tons.
That's a Dodge.
Right. Hold that.
Wow. Yeah. That's hefty.
Hefty. All right. But look at the roller on that guy. Yeah. So this one is one that I keep on hand because that machine is a fat pig. and I want to have extra gear. It's good to have extra blocks. I recommend carrying a couple, a variety of shackles, extra straps. Why?
They break.
They break. They break. Always have a backup plan. What else have we not talked about in the show and tell here? Max Tracks. Just came back from 36 hours at Uwharrie. I told you guys about the event there in North Carolina. Lots of mud, all right? In mud and sand, Max Tracks are your friend. Why? And not just this brand. There are many similar products, but overall, surface area, all right? More flotation. This is gonna give my patch of rubber a bigger piece of the earth to push on, and potentially I can bridge with these, put two of them, that tundra will drive right across it. All right, very useful. Somebody asked me if I had spine boards on the back of my truck. You wouldn't want to lay anybody on this unless you really didn't like them. All right, but it's a useful product. I believe in Max Tracks, like I said, in certain situations, but these won't help you everywhere. In the rocks, I've seen people try to use these to get up rocks. Max Tracks become projectiles in rocks. They will spit out because your tire starts to grab those knobs. If the rock is slippery, it'll just shoot out and you've wasted your time and your energy. So it's not a silver bullet that's going to work in every situation. But I recommend having them. If you're a what I call a soft roader, Subaru Outback, Cross Track, something like that, these will save your bacon. You can go a lot of places in a Subaru with a set of Max Tracks. And last but not least, the high lift jack. Who carries a high lift jack in their truck? Why?
Very versatile. You pull with it, you push with it, spread things apart with it, use it as a winch to come along.
Yep, it's an old school farmer's tool. There are a lot of different brands out there. You'll see different ones from different companies. They've been making high lifts for how long do you think? 100 years? Yeah, it's been around forever. Like Richard said, you can turn this right here to face like this. All right, I can clamp. All right, I can also run the nose up, put that on the other end, jaws of life, I can spread apart. So if this Jeep was rolled over and the A-pillar was smashed in, you can use the high lift to spread apart and open that up to get a guy out. I can use it as a come along, all right? I can lift up with rock sliders. Who doesn't have rock sliders on their truck, Richard? Okay, if you have rock sliders, he's way high up off the ground though. Nothing will ever get it, all right? With rock sliders, I can lift the whole side of the truck up and put both tires in the air if I need to, all right? I can also lift my vehicle up with this, all right, to put something under a tire, to stack rocks or something, to get out of a situation. And then you can also do what's called casting. If I need to take the front of this Jeep, all right, and it's here, but I need this tire to be over here, all right, we can jack it up, get it way up, and these are precarious, right? Is this dangerous? It is. You can use a technique called casting, where we're gonna bring it and let it fall over and bring that front tire a foot and a half over to get it out of a rut in a technique that's called casting. So part of the high lift mystique is that it bites. The high lift will hurt you, all right? So one of the things that we teach people is to always maintain physical control of the high lift, all right? Anybody who's been in the military knows about physical control of the weapon. Hey devil, don't let go of that, keep physical control of it. Same thing with a high lift, all right? If I'm gonna jack this guy up, is this good to go? Why? Dental. It's expensive, right? Under load, when this guy has run all the way up, all right? I've seen it run all the way down, and this will ratchet like a machine gun, clank, 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 light speed until it's out of energy and the vehicle is back down on the ground. And I've seen it lay out full-grown men. Right, Tim? You ever seen it happen to anybody? No. It's ugly. And again, there you are. Now I've got a vehicle casualty, and now Tim is injured, and we're all having a bad day. All right. So you don't want injuries. All right. Now look at this. Look at my hand placement. Is this good to go?
No.
Why?
Smack.
Because again, a little bumper out of the way. When this guy comes all the way up, there's not enough room there for you. Not for my thumbs. And then I'm having a bad day because now I got one paw to recover with. Okay? So you never want to do that. I always do this hand position when using a high lift. Is this good to go? Yes. This is safe because if my thumb's not in there. All right? So that's good to go. This is not. All right? Your mechanism. This is old school technology. What supports the weight of the vehicle? The pins, or is it actually the runner against the bar when it's slightly tilted? There's a friction. It actually puts this into a bind. It's not just the pins. It's the mechanical binding of this nose piece onto the bar. It's not just those pins. How much can we lift with a high lift?
Whatever it's rated.
A lot, whatever it's rated to, but what is a high lift rated at? Where am I going to find that?
It's on the tag, and it's
If it still has a
4,500
tag.
pounds?
Huh?
4,500 pounds?
I think you were pretty close there. Maximum rated load, 4,660 pounds. Okay? So, Richard's truck at 5,000 pounds, can I safely lift one side of the vehicles completely in the air with a high lift?
Yes.
Yes. Why? Mathematics, again, easy. So safely, you can do a lot with this guy. So, care and feeding in the high lift. No, because this isn't used in the overhead rigging industry. I would not assume a safety factor built into the high lift, anything beyond what it marks right there. All right. So like let's use my Ram for instance. Am I gonna lift, because that truck fully loaded as it sits right now is at 10.6. Okay, am I gonna lift one side of my Ram completely off the ground with this? Not safely. It might do it, but I've seen these bars bend and I've seen this give way, and gravity always wins, right? So I wouldn't do it.
And that's it.
Yeah, you're just doing corners.
But one corner, perfectly fine. All right. This guy, lubrication. All right. Adam sells a really cool product called the jack cover. We've all seen the ones from High Lift. It's made of neoprene. They might last a season, and then it's got holes in it, and you're getting dust and debris in there. You can spray this guy down with a lubricant of your choice and seal it up with something like a jack cover, and that way when you need to use it, you take that off, it's lubricated, it's clean, it's not covered in mud and crap, and it's ready to go. So you got to take care of those pins. They also sell rebuild kits with a spring and a replacement pin and everything in it. Cost you $10 at Off-Road Warehouse or whatever. Throw that in a tool bag and forget about it, and you know if you ever break it in the field, you can rebuild it. It's very easy. All right. So, this lever, what do I got in my hands? Gloves. Never do anything without gloves. What did I do to these gloves? They used to have this really cool Velcro thing on there. I cut it off. Why?
Safety has something to grab on.
Because if you're ever handling steel cable and you get a jagger, all right, it's like a fish hook, my hand is going with it. It's going to drag me right into that winch. So you cut those off so that you can pull your hand out of there in an emergency. All right? So I'm always wearing gloves, and then doing things like this, working with a high lift, I'm not fatiguing. I'm not tearing up my hands, because you got to conserve yourself, because recovery operations are very physical. So that's good.
Hit that with a hammer.
Huh?
Release it with a hammer.
Release it with a hammer. So as I do this, what's happening? It's climbing. All right? And I'll turn it around. And again, where's my face in my head?
Not on the pad.
It's good to go, right, bro? No. You're going to get hurt. So stay out of the bite, what I call the bite there. All right? turn this around so that you guys can see it. Again, keeping your thumb and your fingers out of there like that. You can see it climb. This guy's driving me nuts because he's in my way now. These guys, I have a love-hate relationship with it because it's awesome for isolating, but you see as you start to work, now it's in my way, right?
Dave,
Yes.
what I do with mine is I take it off, flip it around, and put it up against the fender or whatever bodywork so the arm.
So that this part doesn't hit the nice green paint on the Tundra?
Exactly.
Yeah, because that doesn't make us happy either. Yeah. And then you start to snowball. It starts to spiral. I'm already pissed. I'm already stuck. Now I've dented the door. Yeah.
Can we see that anyway, Richard?
So that's a good idea.
Bring your Forerunner over.
So you can see those pins alternate. It's moving it up. Now when it's time to come down, Tim, why would I smack that with a hammer?
Because it's under load and
Under load.
it doesn't want to release.
And doesn't want to release. All right. Now remember what I said earlier about this guy going machine gun on him. Sometimes I've seen high lifts have a mind of their own, and when you smack that guy, what does it do?
Straight down.
It wants to run straight down, but these guys are alternating, and this is, and you can have a bad day. So,
Just like that.
Is it better to unlock it with the handle up or the handle down?
I don't think it'll undo with the handle down.
yeah, like, here, let's do it again.
You don't have to pump, just pull it up. Pull it up. Pull the whole thing up, it'll
So
wrap
see
you
that's
around.
going? Works in the up.
No, I was wrong.
Yeah, so that locks it.
Still locked. So it's going to be up to unlock. All right. So be aware. And again, should we just let go of it?
No.
Hold my beer, right? No. Maintain physical control of the high lift. Keep your thumbs, fingers out of that pinch, because that part comes together at the top, and that will really hurt you. All right.
Now, Dave, did you notice that it will slide up to your load without having to crank the entire
Yep.
height?
The whole way.
Very good point. So
No one lifting.
see that? That saved a lot of energy, didn't it? Especially if I'm coming up to rock sliders on Richard's Skymobile there.
That's right.
So
The bottom of the nice green paint though.
how about storing our high lift? Just throw it in the back of the Jeep and go,
Check that.
right? Because in an accident, in a rollover, this guy, he'll win.
Yeah.
He'll win. It's not like it's going to hurt you. So properly secured, the high lift is your friend. If you know how to use it, if you take care of it, that's a really good piece of gear. So that's been about an hour. We talked about some basics. We talked about the vehicle. We talked about the different pieces of gear. If you guys want to come up and ask questions, handle the gear, look at it, ask questions. If you'd like to get your recovery bag and bring it over and have me look at it and talk to you about it, I'd be happy to do that. If you've got questions about your gear. Hopefully you enjoyed today's class and you learned a little bit about things and what I carry and maybe what you should consider carrying.
Dave, what about kinetic straps? How do you feel about those?
Very good question. Kinetic ropes. Bubba rope makes a great kinetic rope. Superlift just came out with a kangaroo rope, which is the same along the same lines. So basically, imagine a winch rope that will stretch. All right. So as opposed to a snap strap, it's a recovery rope, which the rope will stretch approximately 30%. So a 50-foot kinetic rope will stretch 30% and then it will return. Chris Cole is working on a system called Safe Extract. Safe Extract system, basically, they use a kinetic rope. So if you have a mire factor, let's say Richard's stuck in a mud hole, I'm going to load up that kinetic rope with the winch until it starts to slowly pull. and I've seen it in action on things like Unimogs, and it blew my mind because it's a very gentle, it's a very controlled extraction. The vehicle just moves in inches, but it's like loading up a big rubber band. Eventually it starts to pull back. You stretch it out, and at a certain point, it wants to go back to its normal shape. So as far as kinetic ropes, I plan on adding a kinetic rope to my kit, but the kinetic rope that's rated for that truck, I have to sell a kidney. They're not cheap, but yeah, I recommend them. I think they're great, and as a matter of fact, the kinetic rope, in my opinion, has made the snatch strap obsolete. I'm not a big fan of snatch straps at all, because I've seen them break. I've seen bad things with snatch straps, whereas the kinetic rope, properly rated, I think the smallest ones are rated like 27,000 pounds. I mean, you could snatch Richard out of mud holes all day long with a rope like that because it's properly rated for it. So yeah, it's a good piece of gear.
Do you want to mention something about dampening on a winch line?
Winch line dampening. Okay, so old school steel cables. All right, you always see somebody put a coat or they put something on the winch line. Why? Okay, but why does steel rope whip around like an angry bullwhip? Why? Stored energy, torsional energy, more importantly, because it's a braided cable, so there's a steel core. If you ever peel back a steel cable for a splice, it's got a spiral wrap around that core. So when that parts, those spirals, what position do they want to go back to? They want to return to normalcy, so it flails around, all right, and it'll cut a man in half. No kidding, deadly. So by putting a coat or something over the line, it dampens it so that if it does part, it takes it to the ground and it can do the bat snake on the ground instead of in the air. On synthetic line, who's ever seen a Chinese finger puppet? Okay, synthetic line is a braid, and if you take that synthetic line that we've got here, the extension, it's hollow. So there's no core. As I do that, see that? There's no core. It's a hollow braid. So when this parts, I won't say it doesn't fly around because I've actually seen these fly a little bit. It really depends the load, but when they part, they're most likely going to fall in a straight line and return to the ground. All right? Should we still put a dampener over synthetic line? Why not?
Doesn't
Absolutely.
hurt. Don't cost nothing.
It doesn't cost you anything to be safe. So take that extra step, put a dampener on that, and you're just being smart, right? Like I said, sit down, make a cup of coffee, brew a pot of tea, whatever, look at your stuck, make a really good plan of attack, and then always slow it down for safety, all right? In the Marine Corps, we have a saying, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. That works equally well for recovery. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Why? Because you're not making mistakes. You're not getting frustrated. You're not getting injured. You're not damaging your vehicle or your equipment, and you're just calm, cool, and collected about things. Probably the most important thing.
Don't have to do it over.
And you don't have to do it over. Sir, do you have a question?
Yeah, on those kinetic ropes, you don't want to just buy the biggest, heaviest one for your lightweight vehicle.
So the question is, for synthetic ropes and recovery gear in general, you don't want to buy the biggest, heaviest rated one that you can get. You want to match it to the vehicle, yes?
Yeah, well, specifically on the kinetic stuff.
Yeah, and on the kinetic stuff, absolutely. I mean, those kinetic lines, who's ever seen like a whale rope, like a mooring line for a battleship? I know people carrying gear around like that, and I see it and I laugh. I'm like, all right, that's awesome, but you know, with a kinetic rope, you need to put enough weight on it to get the stretch, to get it to work right. All right, so you know, it's like the old saying: if you let your alligator mouth eat up your parakeet ass, right? You don't have enough weight in this to stretch out that mooring line. What's the point of carrying it? It's not going to get any kinetic action. So yes, you want to carry appropriately rated gear, and especially with a kinetic rope, buy the right one for what you're going to recover. I'll use myself as an example. And that thing, I see myself probably giving other people tugs. So I'm gonna end up carrying a smaller one for, 5,000 pound Jeeps, and then a larger one to actually pull myself out. Or someone else to hopefully try to.
You're gonna have to travel with him.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Brings up another good point. You shouldn't be on the trail alone. I see people, yeah, we're going night wheeling. Why? Why? I get it. I like lights, and that's cool. But usually at nighttime, you should be where? In camp or nearing camp, and you should bed down for the night, because everything is harder at night. Recovery is harder at night. Stucks are harder at night. All right? It's like I tell my junior guys at work, nothing good happens after midnight. Get in camp and stay there. You see those guys heading out on a night run alone, all right? It's a recipe for disaster. Always